Hello, hello. All right, masterclass time. Hi there. Thanks for joining. All right, I will fully admit, as everyone's coming in, that I kind of misjudged the time. As you'll notice, my hair is very wet right now. I'm going full curly girl method right now. Hello. And so we're just doing this with wet hair. I will say I'm getting ready for the session that we're doing tonight in my group, my group subscribers. We're falling asleep, and so I thought I'd get ready for bed before then. But today, oh, thank you. This live is going to be a little different. I don't know if you noticed if you're just now joining, if you noticed the title up there, but this is actually what I'm calling a masterclass, which is we're going to focus on one topic, and I'm going to teach and coach on a topic. So if you're here for Big Brother stuff or just random stuff, I promise I'll be doing other lives that focus on that. But today is for people who want to learn how to process their emotions. So just to let you know, I'm not going to be answering any Big Brother questions, not going to be answering any random things. We're just going to be talking about processing emotions. So just so that's out there. All right. But yeah, so what I was saying is, at least for right now, I'm doing this all curly girl method right now. Because I was getting ready to fall asleep, which is the session that we're going to be doing in the subscriber group tonight for group hypnosis, which is usually right now is the time every Sunday night. If you're a subscriber, if you're considering being one, we go live and do our group hypnosis session for the topic of the week. But since we're doing it later tonight in the subscriber group, since the hypnosis is on insomnia and trying to fall asleep, not trying, actually falling asleep, I thought, well, gosh, this will be a perfect opportunity to discuss. Oh, great question. Is this hypnosis or discussing the topic? It's discussing the topic. So this is a little different. So in my practice, I'm a hypnotherapist. I do hypnosis. That's something I focus on. That addresses the subconscious. But I'm actually incorporating more and more just general coaching into what I do, which is what we're going to be doing here today. Is discussing how to process emotions. Because that was something I was talking about on Instagram stories about a week or so ago. And a lot of people messaged me and expressed that just wasn't something that they had ever really learned how to do. And, you know, it's kind of crazy because when we don't process our emotions, they fester, they build up, they come out as physical ailments. Not processing your emotions has such an impact on our day-to-day life. And so that's exactly what we'll be focusing on here today. And just to preemptively answer this, I will be saving this video to my profile so that when you're in the thick of an emotion, you're able to come back here and use these tools that we'll discuss here today. So that being said, first of all, before we get into the actual process, why does this even matter? Why is it important? Well, some of the reasons that I already mentioned is that emotions that grow and fester, they can cause you so many, not only mental health issues, but as oftentimes physical health as well. And also why it's important is because our emotions drive our actions. So think about it this way, and this is what I talk with my clients a lot about. We talk about the fact that you'll be in a normal sort of circumstance of your life, right? Something happens to you, right? And that thing is neutral until you have a thought about it. I'm going to say that again. Whatever happened to you is neutral until you had a thought about it. And what do I mean by that? That means something happens and it in itself, the event, whatever it might be, is inherently neutral until you have a thought about whatever happened. And depending on what sort of thought you have about what happened, creates an emotion within you. How do we know this to be true? Well, because something may happen to you and you may feel a certain way about it. but I'm going to have a different thought about that thing, and I'm going to feel a different way about it. Say something really terrible happens in your life, right? You're going to have a thought about it that's not liking that thing, right? And that thought is going to make you feel sad about it. If I know nothing about it, or I don't have any sort of frame of context for it, I'm not aware of it, I don't know you that well, I might feel sad or sad for you, but I have a different thought about that thing, right, than you would have about that thing. Therefore, I'm going to have a different emotion about that circumstance than you would have about that circumstance. So why emotions matter, because I think, a lot of people, being emotional, tapping into your emotions, right? A lot of people are like, la, 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 it doesn't really matter so much. It actually incredibly matters, especially when you have something that you want to do and achieve, a goal, something that you want to work towards. Your emotions absolutely matter because they drive our actions. So a thought creates an emotion. From that emotion, we determine what sort of actions we want to take. And so this is the kind of thing and then of course your actions that you take or don't take over time, they accumulate into your results. And so whenever I have a client or I'm working with somebody on something that they want to achieve, right, in their life, we want to look at what thoughts are creating those emotions. Thoughts and emotions are super powerful. Absolutely. And there's a lot of sort of debate back and forth. And I think myself, even as I explore these things, I, look into it and determine kind of where this happens. I think in some instances, most instances, now here's the thing, the thought will create the emotion. Oftentimes you have to ask yourself, are you consciously aware of what that thought is? Because sometimes it can happen in a split second. Sometimes it can happen not even in our conscious awareness, but in our subconscious awareness. But a thought is always creating that emotion. So that's why it's important. And emotions drive our actions. How are you going to show up? What are you going to do or what won't you do depending on what emotional state you're in, right? Having, exactly, mountaineers, emotional resilience. That's really going to create like how you show up and who you're going to be, right? Depending on what emotional state you're in. Also, we only really ever want things. This is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite teachers, Esther Hicks. We only ever really want something because we think we'll feel better in the having of it, right? We only ever want something because we think we're going to feel better when we have it or when we do it or when we're that person, whatever it might be, right? And so that's where emotions also come into play, is that think of any sort of goal you might have, any sort of dream you might have for your life. Why do you want that thing? Why do you want to own that thing? Why do you want to be that way? Why do you want to do that thing? Because you think you're going to feel better. It's going to fill you with joy. It's going to fill you with peace, happiness, relief, whatever it might be, right? You think it's going to help having that thing or being that way. You think it's going to create an emotion within you. And honestly, from a manifestation point of view, if we're looking at it through this lens, we recognize that actually it's opposite than what we're ever really taught, is that we have to create that emotion within ourselves first in order to create the thing, to be a match for the thing, right? And so it's actually the opposite order. That's really a kind of a whole different conversation, how to create different emotions, how to create positive emotions within us. But today, what we're going to be focused on is about how you can process any sort of negative emotions you might be feeling. And to recognize negative emotions are so valuable to us because they tell us if we're on track with who we want to be, what we want to accomplish, what we want to have. A negative emotion is so valuable to you to recognize, okay, I'm off track. I'm not creating the life that I want. And why are you not creating the life that you want when you have that negative emotion? Because we know that the first point that I said, our emotions create our actions. Trust me, say you're wanting to build a business, okay? But you're feeling really scared, you're feeling really anxious, you're feeling very nervous. What sort of actions are you going to do or not do when you're feeling that way? Well, you're probably going to want to research a lot. You're probably going to be all in your head. You're going to hem and haw. You're not going to get much done. You're going to need to, look for somebody else for the answer, right? You're not doing the thing, right? You're scared. And so over time, if you keep on feeling that way, you're not going to create that business that you want to create or whatever your goal might be, right? Because of those actions. So our emotions are very valuable. They're kind of the alarm system that our body gives us to tell us if we're on track with living the kind of lives that we want to live. Now, that's why it's so important to, of course we want to feel good, right? Who doesn't want to feel good having positive emotions? But our negative emotions are just as valuable because they give us that sort of information too. So there's also some emotions that we would categorize somewhat as indulgent, right? And those emotions are worry, pity, confusion, self-loathing, overwhelm, anxiety. They're indulgent emotions because they stop us from being able to make progress in them. Now, I don't know if you guys, I actually had one of these self-indulgent evenings the other day myself. So please do not feel bad if you find yourself having these type of emotions. But have you ever had this situation where you're feeling one of these emotions and the momentum of that emotion is just so strong? You're like in the thick of the emotion, right? You didn't catch it. You hadn't done this process, all right, that I'm going to share with you here. That you're in the thick of that emotion and it feels like you're swimming in it. It's very indulgent, right? And let me ask you, how much progress are you really making on what you want to achieve when you're in the thick of that emotion? I'll give you the example. I know it's silly. Here I am on social media right now, but I was just like, how in the world do I create, I'll give you the example how in the world do I create the graphics that look good for social media? That was what I was, and I know how to create graphics. I've done this stuff. I couldn't create what I had a picture in my head of what I wanted and I couldn't get it out on the computer. And so I was getting oh, woe is me, indulgent emotions, right? And so what did you do? What did I do? I was like, you know what? I just can't focus on this. I just want to watch TV for the rest of the evening. I knew I was not in the mental space to be able to look at this. And so the next day I had a clear head, clear mind. I was able to create some amazing graphics, love how they look, was able to figure it out. But your emotional state, right? Especially when you're experiencing those indulgent emotions, literally stop your progress. They halt your progress. And we can compound it when we're trying to battle through it, right? I could have wasted hours trying to get through it. But instead I recognize, you know what? I'm just going to need to look at this with a set of clear eyes in the morning. And so oftentimes when we haven't caught it soon enough through the process I'm going to be able to share with you here, is that, we recognize that it stops our progress. So here is the example, and I'm going to try to take you step by step through this. And actually, you know what? Let me see if I can share. I've never done this before, but let's see. Okay, awesome. You should be able to see this process right here. Oh, this is nifty. I literally created this. See, I can create graphics. I literally created this 2 minutes before I got on here. So I'm very happy about this. I'm going to lead you through this process. And so as we do this, I want you, first of all, a good way to kind of go through this process, should you be feeling any sort of emotions that you'd like to process, a good thing that you can do is either go through it and sort of ask you these questions that I'm leading you through to yourself, or even better, especially as you rewatch this recording, because it's going to live on my profile after we're done here, you can go back through and pause after each question or after each step of this process. And so you can go back here, pause, and you can even journal or write down what's kind of coming up for you as we're leading you through the steps here. So that's what I would suggest, is really to journal, write it down. Once you get adept at this, once you get, you've done this several times, you can even just kind of ask the questions to yourself and think about it a little bit. But I really would suggest writing things down. This is the intention of this process, okay? The intention is to process the emotion, to sit with the emotion, to understand its signal, not to get rid of it. Oh, and I know that's going to be so painful to hear. You're like, Brittany, it doesn't feel good. I want it to change. I'm feeling sad. I want to feel happy. Like, what do you mean not get rid of it? And here's why. And I'm going to show you something. If you're my client, you probably see me do this a million times. But here's a good reminder. Have you guys ever seen these little finger traps before? I'll zoom out. You ever seen these finger traps? Maybe you played with them when you were a kid, right? And you put your fingers in, and you pull and you pull and you pull and you pull and you get stuck, right? The harder you pull, the more stuck your fingers are in this trap. This is what it's like when you're trying to get rid of a negative emotion, okay? You're feeling that anxiety come up. It doesn't feel good. And so you're just trying so hard, trying to get rid, to feel calm. I want to feel calm. I don't want to feel this anxiety. And you push and you push and you push and you push, and it just gets you further trapped in this trap, right? That's what it's like when we're trying to get rid of emotions. Whereas when we can sit with the emotion, when we can process the emotion, when we can do these 9 steps that I'm going to lead you through here in detail with the emotion, that's when we begin to relax, release, and then it's so easy to get your fingers out of the trap. That's what it's like with emotions when we're pushing against the emotion. And so we would consider this somewhat of a catch-22, right? But it's like, okay, I don't want to feel the emotion. I want to get rid of the emotion, but really it's by feeling the emotion, sitting with it, going through this process that I'll lead you through that allows you'll notice more often than not that the emotion will process and it will be done. And it won't be stuck in your body, and you won't be trying to escape it by watching TV like I did the other night, or overeating, over drinking, turning to drugs, gambling, porn, whatever it might be. We do these activities that we do to sort of numb what we're feeling because we're so scared of the actual feeling that we just don't know what to do. We don't know how to process it. But really it's by running away. It's by numbing. It's by doing all these other things that get us stuck in the trap, right? That makes it feel worse than if we just processed it to begin with. So as we go through this process, I want you to think of an example. Think of the last time you were feeling emotion. Maybe something's coming up for you even right now that you can use as an example. And I want you to really think of that example as we go through this process. So what's the first step that we do? And I'll use an example of something that I was feeling earlier today, okay? As an example of an emotion. Because I turned to these notes and I thought, oh, this is the perfect time. Let's process this, right? So first what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to name the emotion. And you think, oh, Brittany, that sounds pretty easy. But how often have you really gotten clear about what you're feeling? So, for example, I was feeling this mixture of anger, and it felt like anger at first. And then it was like, okay, maybe it's actually more like hurt. Then I realized there was a lot of shame, which is funny because I don't ever think of myself as somebody who feels a lot of shame, but there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of hurt. And then it was like, oh, I think anger was like the top layer, but really underneath what was really getting me was this hurt, was this shame, these feelings. You begin to name the feeling. And oftentimes that can be really difficult for us. I know I work with some clients that we're spending the majority of our time together just trying to name the feeling. And you know what can be really helpful for you if you're having difficulty naming the feeling is even just Googling emotional chart or emotions or something like that. There's so many online resources that show you all the different kind of emotions that you may be feeling. And sometimes it's helpful to just look at it. What does hurt feel like different than anger? What does anger feel like different than frustration? Okay, they could feel very similar, but what's the difference? And how do you know the difference? And again, this is working on our emotional intelligence to be able just to, first of all, just name it, right? So that's the first step, name it. Because all of a sudden you're going to have a hold on it the more you can name it. Second step is to acknowledge it. Recognize, okay, say you name it, say you recognize it's hurt. Okay, I'm feeling hurt right now. I'm feeling shame. Acknowledge that it's there. And just sit with it. Be present with it. Feel it and allow it Again, it gets back to this finger trap we were looking at before. And when we try to run away from it, that gets us caught in the trap. But when we feel it, when we allow it, when we recognize that it's there, because here's the truth, all right? The truth is that emotions are just vibrations. They're just experiences that we have in our body, caused by a sentence in our mind. Think about that. Emotions are vibrations. They're experiences that we have in our body, literally caused by a sentence that we're having in our minds. And so, since we're processing emotions, we're not necessarily looking to change them here right now. You might find it beneficial to think, what is that sentence that's creating the emotion? Or I just want you to kind of sit with it. It doesn't even really matter at this stage. We could focus on changing it later. At this stage, you're just wanting to be with it. Okay? You're wanting to recognize that it's an experience in your body, really what it is. Because oftentimes we're trying to run away from it so much that really when we look at what are we trying to run away from, it's just an experience in the body. And so that leads us to number 3 here, recognize it in the body, right? How are you experiencing that emotion in your body? Really, as you're in the thick of it, tune into it. And so this morning, I was feeling super hurt, feeling a lot of shame, feeling some anger. And I just sat with it. And I felt that experience in the body. And for me, it's going to be different for you. It's going to be different depending on what emotion it is. But for me, in this one moment, sorry, my nose is so itchy. I don't know why I keep on itching my nose. Sorry. For me, in this moment, it felt like waves. I literally felt like goosebumps all over my body. I felt like this waves of shame. It felt like a constriction in my throat. It felt like my eyes were leaking. I was crying. It felt like my eyes were leaking. I felt congestion up here. I felt a constriction in my throat. And it really just felt like, it felt like my heart was like emptying out. Like my heart was like a bucket of water and it was just emptying out. And it just felt open, raw, vulnerable. Like I felt so vulnerable feeling this shame, this hurt. I just felt like somebody had just like waxed my arm or my body and I was just like, ow, like it hurt, right? Even though it was an emotion. This is what it felt like in the body. And so ask yourself, what does this emotion feel like in the body? One of my teachers, she describes it as, picture a Martian, an alien was coming down to Earth, okay? And they don't experience emotions the way that we experience emotions, okay? So they're there and they're watching you, sort of interested. They're sort of interested in you and they're like, so hurt. This is me being the alien, okay? Hurt, interesting. Brittany, what is that? I don't know what that is. And so imagine you're explaining this emotion you're experiencing to this alien. How would you describe it to this Martian, okay? How would you describe the feeling of this emotion? Or, here's another example. Pretend that emotion is injected into a syringe, okay? You have this long syringe of this emotion. And somebody is about to inject you with the emotion, okay? They're about to inject you with the hurt, all right? I mean, this is oftentimes what happens, right? When we're watching scary movies, we're literally by watching this, we're being injected with fear, right? Or suspense or something. What would it feel like as soon as that emotion hit your bloodstream? What's going to happen in the body of this emotion? And so this is where number 3 here, which is recognize it in the body. How would you describe it? And really get clear on that and then also sort of recognize, I think when I was realizing okay, it's like waves of shame. It's a constriction in my throat. It's this raw, vulnerable sort of feeling that I'm like, oh, that's what, if I hadn't processed it, I'm running away from. You mean I'd rather, I'm just making this up, stuff myself with food until I have a stomach ache than feel that? Oftentimes the things that we do to sort of get rid of the emotions are like, they're more detrimental to us than if we just sat with the emotion, right? Especially they can be detrimental to our goals and to what we want to achieve, right? Say you're trying to lose weight, and every time you feel a negative emotion, you turn to food to numb yourself. Not only are you creating a stomach ache for yourself, but you're keeping yourself from your goal. Rather than if you just felt the constriction in your throat for a little bit, the raw vulnerability, the waves of hurt in the body, right? So it's interesting to see which one are you picking, because the one that you're picking is actually hurting you way more than if you just felt the emotion, processed the emotion. So let's move on to number 4 here, which is having third person compassion for yourself. So you felt the emotion in the body, then you can say, wow, that's interesting. This is what this emotion feels like. Become the observer of yourself having the emotion and have some sort of curiosity and sort of interest to it. Be like, interesting. So I did just that. This morning I was like, this is shame. Very interesting, because I read, I don't know if you've ever read any books by Brittany Brown. She talks about shame a lot. Shame being this idea of, being inherently wrong or bad as a person, right? And so I thought, this is so interesting. I think this is what I'm feeling right now. And I don't ever really think of myself as somebody who experiences shame, but that is definitely what I'm feeling right now. And so be curious about it. Almost like you're a detective or a reporter, just being like, so this is what shame feels like. This is what sadness feels like. This is what anger feels like. This is what hurt feels like, whatever it might be that you're experiencing. Have compassion for yourself. And it's almost like you're a third person, like you're almost out of your body in a way. That you're, there's the you down here experiencing the emotion in your body, and then there's the you that's looking at yourself, witnessing yourself having that emotion. And this is something that we do in hypnosis quite a bit. If you've experienced hypnosis, it really allows yourself to have that third person perspective. But when we have that third person perspective, recognizing that we, as in our soul, our consciousness, our being, isn't necessarily the one having the emotion, we're the one that's recognizing we're having the emotion, you're able to separate yourself from it a bit more and have some leverage on it, if you will. So that's number 4. Have that third person compassion and interest about, this is what this emotion is like. And then move on to number 5. Ask yourself, what is this emotion teaching you? What is it showing you? Because there's a lot that we can remember. Emotions are these signals in our body, right? They're so valuable. Even negative emotions are so valuable to us. Positive emotions, they say, Yes, I want to experience more of this. Good. Continue doing this, right? That's your body saying, yes, we're good. We're on the right track. We're doing things. Negative emotions are like, hey, trying to get your attention. Something's off here. What is this emotion teaching you about the situation, about yourself? So I'm even trying to think this morning. I was trying to think what this emotion was teaching me. And I think in the situation I was in, it taught me that actually I just have a tremendous amount of love to give. That I wouldn't be feeling this way if I didn't love the people around me so very much. And that actually, the feelings of shame could make you think that you're inherently a bad person, but a person who loves so deeply is not a bad person. And that's what it was teaching me. This particular instance, that's what it was teaching me. And sitting with that learning, that teaching, what it was showing me was really, it felt a lot better to recognize, I'm only feeling this way because I love very deeply. And that's a good thing. Good people love deeply. And to recognize that learning. So that's number 5. What is it teaching you? Ask yourself, this is a very important question. And then number 6 is forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for the judgment that perhaps you may be having about this emotion. Okay, if you haven't thought of this is absolutely going to blow your mind. It blew my mind the first time I realized this. We all experience good emotions, bad emotions, negative emotions, positive emotions. I don't even want to call it good or bad because this precisely demonstrates my point, which is that oftentimes what makes what we would consider a good emotion good or a bad emotion bad is the thought that we're having about the emotion. So think of it this way. Anxiety. This is a great example. So many of my clients deal with anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling in the body. You know what actually oftentimes causes us the most pain or issue? Is the judgment we're having about the anxiety, the thought that we're having, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Something's wrong. What's wrong with me? I hate when I feel this way. It's the thoughts that we're having about the emotion. And so when you have that third person's perspective, right? When you're the observer of yourself having the emotion, recognize what thoughts might you be having that are actually compounding your suffering. Where all of a sudden, it's not that you feel bad. I mean, I'm even thinking of an example that I dealt with, and I'll change the details here, but a client that I had a couple weeks ago was feeling an emotion, let's just call it anxiety, but really what was causing him the most suffering was the thoughts he was having about the anxiety he was feeling. Was, this must mean something's wrong with me. I will never find somebody in my life. I'll never be able to spend my life. Something I inherently am not as good as other people because I'm feeling this way. I mean, those are some heavy thoughts, right? Those are some heavy thoughts that actually those thoughts feel way worse than the actual anxiety itself of which he was having the thoughts about, right? And so forgive yourself for having that judgment, those thoughts that are judging the emotion that you're having. Right? I think even in myself this morning, it started out with anger. It started out with hurt, but it moved into shame because of the thoughts I was having about the situation, right? And so forgive yourself. Really say it's okay. It's all right to be feeling this way. Recognize why you're feeling that way. And recognize that perhaps you might be compounding your own suffering with the thought or with the judgment that you have about it. And so that's number 6, forgive it. Number 7 is thank it. Have gratitude for it, which I know is kind of a very different sort of thing to experience if you're not used to it. But thank the emotion for what it's teaching you, for the learning, right? For it presenting itself and calling out to you, for it being that vital signal to you so that you know, hey, there's something I need to change here. If I want to feel better, there's something I need to do. There's a thought that's not serving me in this instance. Think if you didn't have those signals. Think if you didn't have those emotional signals to tell you when you're off track. You could be off track for years and years and years and years, and you may never know. That would be that'd be terrible. I'm glad that I have the negative emotions that tell me, hey, something's off with your thinking. Something's off track. They're here to give you those signals. They're there to draw your attention, right? So thank it and feel gratitude for it. Whatever you can, whatever sort of gratitude you might be able to have about it, for it calling itself out to you. So that's number 7. Give thanks, give gratitude for it, for what it's teaching you, for it bringing it to your attention. And then number 8 is just letting it be. Let it go. Let it just be in the body. Don't try to get rid of it. Let it go. Let it morph. Let it run free, okay? Because now you know what it is. You've forgiven it. You've allowed it. You've learned from it. You've noticed how it felt in the body. Just let it be, because feeling it, you can handle that. Feeling it is harmless. The harm, the true harm, comes from avoiding it, from turning to other things that will harm you, drugs, alcohol, porn, overeating, whatever it might be, turning towards those things instead. Those are the harmful things. Letting it fester in your body until you have a chronic, illness. Those are the harmful things, but just feeling it in the moment, that's going to allow it to process and pass. So you'll notice as you feel it, it will morph, it will either pass, or you'll just begin to recognize it for what it is. And it just doesn't become so scary. It reminds me of this really interesting story that I heard. And it makes so much sense because our emotions reside in our subconscious minds, as do, our dream state and our imaginations and what we tap into when we're dreaming. But it reminds me of this woman who had this chronic nightmare of this guy chasing her. Every night she had this terrible nightmare of this man, this cloaked figure that was chasing her. And she it would wake her up. She couldn't get any sleep. She was feeling awful. And so she went to a therapist. She said, oh my gosh, I need I need this nightmare to stop. It's disrupting my sleep. And so eventually this particular teacher or therapist or whatnot said, what happens if you just stop running from it? Stop running from the cloaked figure in your dream and just allowed it, to be there. See what it wants. You're in a dream. It's not actually going to hurt you. Just see what it wants, right? So she goes, gosh, I never really considered that before. She was always so focused on running from it, right? And so the next time this nightmare came up, she willed herself to stop and to confront the figure. And so she stopped, and the figure came right up to her, and then it handed her a wallet and said, yeah, sorry, ma'am, you dropped this a bit away. This cloaked figure just wanted to hand her wallet that had fallen out of her purse a while ago. Again, this was all in her dream, right? And then the moment she had that, she never had that nightmare ever again. Okay? And I'm sharing this example because when we run from things, when we avoid things, when we try to turn towards other harmful activities to numb our emotions, these things, right? They end up doing so much more harm than if we just confront them. When we just recognize them for what it is, right? It no longer becomes quite so scary. And here's the thing. We oftentimes think that we need to be confident so that we can do things. There is nothing so confident as knowing that you can encounter any emotion that comes your way. That is the strongest sense of confidence you will ever feel. When you know that no matter what I come up against, no matter what emotion I might feel, I'm going to be able to process it. I'm going to be able to handle it. Anything that comes my way. Imagine what you would do. Imagine what risks you may take. Imagine how you might put yourself out there and do new things if you knew you could handle the fear, the rejection, the hurt, the embarrassment, the whatever negative emotions you're so scared of avoiding why you're not doing that thing you want to do. If you knew you could process them and handle them, imagine what you would do. You'd be unstoppable. You'd literally be unstoppable. And this is what I coach my clients through, right? I help them be unstoppable because when they're feeling a certain emotion, we figure out, one, how to process it, and two, what thoughts are leading into it so that we can shift those thoughts so that they can do what they want to do. And so it's this emotion, once you follow this process, we're on number 8, letting it be. It's either going to just move on through. That's what happened to me this morning. I just let it be. And it lingered around for, maybe another 30 minutes or so. Everyone's going to be different, right? But for me, this was the situation I was in. It lingered for another 30 minutes or so. And then it passed. And I was fine. And even if it doesn't pass, you recognize that you can handle it. And the confidence that comes from that, it just doesn't become quite as scary. It doesn't keep you from doing the things that you want to do. And you're no longer reliant on those numbing mechanisms to avoid it. And then this might be a place, once you're adept with this is not what we're doing here today, but you might want to move into doing some sort of thought work, where you can be more deliberate with your emotional state. And this is what I do when I coach my clients. This is that kind of work. And you might be able to recognize, and why I have little stars next to number nine, which is soothe, is that you may or may not feel the need to do this, want to do this. It may not be appropriate. But if you've, been sitting with this emotion, if you truly have done steps number 1 through steps number 8, if you truly have done this, then you might get to step number 9 and decide that you want to engage in activities that can help you soothe the emotion. You could do a hypnosis session on it. We have a whole library of hypnosis sessions in the subscription that address all different kinds of emotions. You might want to go take a nap, go to sleep. How often do we just feel better when we wake up the next day, right? It's because we're not in the thick of that emotion anymore. Or you might want to engage in activities that you enjoy. You want to shift your focus. Because again, we're feeling this emotion because of the thought that we're having about it. And so if we have a different thought, either about it or just a different thought entirely, our focus is shifted. We go watch some TV, we go, watch a movie, do something that's not going to be harmful for you, but we shift our focus, right? That it can soothe the emotion, that it isn't going to be quite as strong for you. And so that's something you can begin to move to, but I would only do that if you've done steps 1 through 8 first. Because by the time you get through to step 8, I oftentimes feel that there's not even really a strong need to have to soothe it because you've processed it fully. And so this is so healthy for you guys. If you can make it a habit to process your emotions when they come up, come back to this video, go through steps 1 through 9, then the emotion isn't going to compound. It isn't going to fester. It's not going to cause you all these other issues down the road. And it won't keep you from taking action towards living the kind of life that you want to live. You'll be able to do so just, in spite of it. Not because you need it to be a certain way before you can. So that's all I have for you. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions that are related to this, like I said, I'm not answering any big brother questions or any personal questions right here today. There'll always be other lives that I do where I'll answer those types of things. But if you have any questions about processing your emotions or want to give me an example, I'd be more than happy to answer any sort of questions you have. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful for you. Please do come back to this video anytime. This comes up so often, and this is actually why I wanted to make this free and accessible to everybody right here now. I didn't make it just for subscribers because I really think that this is something that just should be taught in schools, right? And luckily I'm able to be a teacher. I don't teach at a school, but I'm able to be a teacher to help teach these sort of things so that we can, be our most healthy emotional selves, right? As we move through here. And I also wanted this to serve as a resource because this comes up so often that I wanted to be able to point people back to this exact video, say, hey, go through this process. Yeah. Oh, let's say thank you. I enjoyed this. I hope you do more of these. You should write a book. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Your goals should scare you. Any advice on emotions that come up during goal setting? Yeah, that's a really great question. Foxnod. This idea that your goals should scare you, because we do hear it. And oftentimes if you're feeling comfy in your goals, when you're setting these goals, right? If you're feeling comfy, it's probably not big enough. And you're going to achieve it real quickly and you're going to have to set another one too. So I think there's a difference, at least in my opinion, there's a difference between setting a goal that scares you and having fear as your, taking action on the goal. So I would kind of view those separately. So I do agree with the statement that your goals should scare you, that they should be something that's like, oh, wow. And when they say goals should scare you, I guess personally, and what I see in a lot of my clients, that it's more along the lines of, scared as in, whoa, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's for me. You know, that it's almost like, I almost think that quote should be updated to like, your goals should overwhelm you, or your goals should feel far bigger than what you think you can achieve, or something like that, right? Your goal should scare you doesn't necessarily mean you gotta feel the feeling of fear in the sense of like watching a scary movie or jumping out of an airplane or something like that. You know, I'm just making that distinction. That they should feel big, they should feel unaccomplishable, so that you can begin to do the thought work. And I think that's a valid question to sort of ask yourself. What about this goal? So I'm trying to think, what's a goal that I could just use as an example? Or you can even provide your own example if you'd like. I'll just go with an example here. What would be a goal that would scare me? Okay, making millions, having $1 million year, okay? Spoiler alert, don't make millions, not yet, but that's a big scary goal. It's like, whoa, wow, that's a lot, okay? Then I begin to ask myself, why? Why does that scare me so much? Why do I say, whew, that's a scary goal? What would be the thought that's creating that? And so you might ask yourself, okay, what is the thought that's creating that? The thoughts that's creating that big scary goal. I haven't seen it happen yet, so it doesn't seem possible. Okay, well then we look at that. What emotion does that create within you? Okay, it's feeling of unease. All right, when I'm feeling uneasy, what sort of actions do I take? Well, I'm probably overwhelmed, right? I'm probably like, oh, okay, I'm feeling uneasy, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I can try to process that emotion here, right? Through the steps that we outlined here through today's video. I could accomplish the emotion that way, but I recognize that if I sit in that unease, I'm probably going to do just that. I'm just going to sit in it, right? I'm not going to do very much to move forward into accomplishing that goal. And then if you sit all the time and you don't do very much, what do you create? You create not accomplishing it, right? That's the results that you get. And so this is where we move more into the thought work, recognizing what's another thought? So what was the thought that created the unease or the fear in me in this instance? The example being the thought was, oh, I don't think this is possible for me. I've never done it before. I had that emotion of unease, uncomfiness, right? Because I was thinking that thought. And so you might ask yourself, once you processed it, because I don't want to jump the gun too much, right? This is when I say when we move into the kind of the deliberate thought work. The deliberate thought work there could be, what's a thought that feels just 1% better? What's a new thought that if I put on that new thought for size, that might create a different emotion within me? Or you could work backwards. You could say, okay, this example was, I want to have $1 million year. That's the result I want. What sort of actions am I going to have to do to create, and insert your goal that you have, right? Your scary goal, insert that in the results. What sort of actions will you have to do to create those results? Only you know the answer. And even if you're like, oh, I don't know, you can guess. What's something, if you had to know right now, what's some first steps you might take, right, on achieving that goal? Then you ask yourself, what sort of feeling am I going to need to feel so that I'll take those actions? Because we know our emotions create our actions. And we know that the feeling of fear, right, because this is a big scary goal, isn't going to help us accomplish it. So what sort of feeling would help you take those actions? So say those actions are, I don't know, posting on social media every day, in the example that I gave, right? How would I need to feel? What emotions would I need to feel so that I do those actions? Well, I would need to feel very inspired, right? I need to feel very excited. I want to show up on this app, teaching like I am here right now every day, feeling really good, feeling really inspired, right? So that's how I need to feel. I need to feel the feeling of inspiration, the emotion of inspiration, excitement, motivation. And then here's the crux, right? This is why we call it thought work. What thought would I need to think in order to feel inspired? What thought would I need to think about this goal, this multi-million year, about taking action on social media, those actions that I spelled out for my goal? What thoughts would I need to think to feel inspired? Ooh, I just love changing people's lives. I just love changing people's lives. I love giving somebody that aha moment. like hopefully some of you are experiencing here today, learning how to process your emotions. I love that feeling. That makes me want to show up every single day. It makes me want to teach every single day because I love that feeling. I love when I get DMs that are like, Brittany, oh my gosh, I finally listened to your video. I am feeling so much better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love hearing that people are living better lives just because I was able to teach something that I knew. I love that. And so if I think that thought that I just said, that makes me feel really pumped up. It makes me feel inspired, which in turn is going to make me take more actions, which is going to make me create the result. So thank you for sharing your insights and experience. Well, thank you. So do that to your own goal, kind of reverse engineer it, right? Until you get to the thoughts that you have to think daily. And whether you write them down on a sticky note and put them on your computer somewhere where you can see them, these are you retraining your mind, your brain to think these thoughts instead. Cool. Any other questions about how to process our emotions? This process? I can't remember. There might have been another question that came up right around when I answered this question, but I might have missed it. If you're still here and you still have it, feel free to comment it again. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you find this useful. I hope you found it valuable. And I guess the last thing I'd leave you with is just be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself because processing emotions is something that we're not often taught. It's something that can feel a little interesting at first. It's not going to feel good. Negative emotions don't necessarily feel good. Dealing with daily anxiety. Go back through here if you weren't on here the entire time. When I post this, follow these steps when you're feeling anxious. So that you can process these emotions so that they don't fester and they don't grow bigger. If we process them at the very beginning stages of them, they don't cause us as many issues. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Again, if you're having trouble falling asleep, if you have insomnia, if you have difficulty falling asleep at night, join the subscription tonight at 10 p.m. Central. So in about 3 hours or so, we're going live. I'm going live here again and doing a group hypnosis session on helping you fall asleep. So it's not too late if you're going to miss that session. Of course, also, if you need to go to bed before then, it's going to be in the library. So you'll always be able to listen to it as a subscriber as you go through here. And if any of this thought work was interesting to you, was valuable to you in any sort of way, this is exactly what I do with my clients, is help them find those thoughts, help them recognize what actions are going to move them towards their goals, help them process emotions. And so if you think you could use a little bit more one-on-one attention when it comes to that, sign up for my hypnotherapy and coaching sessions. I work one-on-one with clients across the world. Have clients in all different sorts of countries, mainly the US, across the US, but we work one-on-one on these things. Every session is 90 minutes long. The first 30 minutes or so, we coach. I help you find those better thoughts. I help you find those emotions that are actually going to serve you. We work on your particular instance. And then the last hour or so, we do hypnosis. We do hypnotherapy together that can further instill this work at the subconscious level. All that we talked about today was all conscious mind, right? But on the subconscious mind, we can really heal at that level too. And so when you address it from both perspectives, both conscious mind and subconscious mind, that's when you feel the most change. So have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.